Can I just say that I dyed my hair purple over a year ago, and don't buy box dye, it's bad. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So recently the bracelet community has been being taken over by these things. Everybody has been using these like little swivel keychains to make alpha keychains on. These might be sneak peeks for my Etsy shop coming soon. Anyways, so today I'm doing a video basically just explaining how to start and end your alpha keychains using these beautiful keychains. But look at how adorable this is. It's a little dinosaur. Y'all would buy this, right? Right. Anyways, I'm gonna shut up. Let's get into this video. It's super easy and fun. Let's go. So to make your alphas on a keychain, you're going to obviously need some keychains. I believe these ones I'm using in the video are called like swivel keychains. I'm going to link some down below, check them out. But these ones are especially nice because they have this flat edge and it creates a nice straight edge for your alpha bracelet, obviously. And then you're going to want your embroidery floss, and then also to pick out a pattern that you're going to be making. I'm doing this like boba alpha pattern. You're going to want to tape down your keychain to secure it, and then go ahead and just cut however many base strings you need for your alpha. My alpha pattern is 14 strings wide, so I cut 7 base strings. I'm going to fold all my strings in half to get like 14 total base strings. So now I'm going to go ahead and attach my base string. So I'm going to start by taking one base string at a time. I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm going to put the side that has this loop, and I'm going to thread this underneath my keychain and kind of just like try to pull it through my key ring like so. And then I'm going to take the end and I'm going to stick it through the loop, and then I'm going to basically just pull it through just like so. This is called, I believe, a lark's head knot. There is like images on Google as well, but I'm gonna keep making these lark's head knots with my base strings, doing one at a time until I've done all of them. I also want to say that with these specific key rings, I think you can get up to a total of 9 base strings that will fit on these key rings. More than 9, I think, is just too big and they don't fit. Alright, so now that your base strings are attached, I'm going to show you how I like to attach my background string. So to do this, I'm going to grab just like this whole entire huge clump of my background color, and I'm going to pull some thread out, and I'm going to kind of loop it over, and I'm going to create kind of this little tail. So one side kind of has my entire string, but then the other side has this little tail. I'm going to make it a few inches long, and I'm going to repeat the same lark's head process. So I'm going to put the loop underneath my keyring and thread it through, and then I'm going to take my entire clump of string and the little tail and do my best to fish all of it through the loop, and then just kind of start pulling everything through and creating that knot. That way this attaches your background string but doesn't create that like ugly single knot type of look. So now we are ready to start our keychain, and I wanted to show you guys just the difference in like what the knots look like on the keychain. So this is like the side that I was making the knots on, and you can see that there's like these little holes, but if I flip it over, you can see that these knots have been created, and I just think that this side looks so much nicer. So I personally like to flip my keychain over and then have like these knots facing like up, if that makes sense. I just think it looks better. It doesn't really matter what side you have facing up, but I think that just having the knot facing up just looks a lot better. So now I'm going to start making my bracelet, and I wanted to show you guys how I started this. So you can see on the right side over here, I have my background string, and then I have this little tail that we created in the beginning, if you remember, when we attached our background string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine this little tail with one of my base strings, and I'm going to use my background string and make my knots over top of the base string and the little tail included in the knot. That way we can kind of like stitch that little tail back into the bracelet, and it just creates this like nice clean edge, and we're not like cutting off strings and like making things look weird. But so here you can see I have made more of my bracelet, and if we flip it over, we can see that I did include this tail in a few of my rows, but then I stopped including it, and now it's kind of just hanging out. So just like any other scrap pieces on the back, you can just go ahead and snip that tail right off, and it just looks really flawless, and it creates this nice edge, and that background color was stitched in very nicely. So there are some alpha patterns that do have an odd number of base rings. My last pattern had 14, which is an even number, but this one has 17, which is an odd number. So I'm going to show you guys how you can do the same process, but with an odd number of base rings. So this pattern I'm using has 17 base rings. So I cut 8 base strings, which would make 17, but now I need like a little random like half string to make 17, and that's gonna look ugly on my key ring. So I'm gonna show you guys how you can avoid that single knot. So I'm gonna just go through the same process. I'm gonna skip over this part because I already demonstrated how to do this. It's the same exact process again, taking your base strings one by one, doing the lark's head knot, and I'm doing this for all 8 of my base strings that I cut. So once all my base strings are attached, now I have 16 base strings, but I need 17 to do my pattern. So now I'm going to have to attach another string to get 17. So to do this is going to be a very similar process to how we attached our background string in the first part of this video. So I'm going to take a string out of my background color that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to actually extend a long enough piece to be long enough to be one of my base strings. You can see I'm measuring out how long I need the base string to be, and then once I figured the length, I'm going to make the loop for the lark's head knot at that point. And then just like before, I'm going to thread my entire clump of background string and the base string now through the loop and pull it through. And now you can see that we have created another base string and also attached our background color at the same time. This way we can avoid that single string look. Obviously, you can see that my base strings and my background color are the same, so you don't have to do this. One of your strings could just be different from your base strings. It doesn't really matter. I personally like to do my base strings and my background colors the same. I think it just looks better, but you can obviously just use different colors and it's totally fine. So now I'm going to start the bracelet, but unlike the other part of this video, how we had to thread that tail back into the bracelet, this time we don't have to thread anything back into the bracelet because that extra tail was actually a base string. So now I'm just going to be doing my knots over every single base string. I'm not going to be threading any tails or anything through anything. So here obviously you can see I am just doing my knots on all of my base strings. So now we're back to the boba keychain. I'm going to show you guys how I like to end my keychains. You can just like tie a knot or like braid your ends or do whatever you want to end your keychain, but I think that this look just looks a lot nicer, so I'm going to show you guys how I do it. So you're going to start by basically just separating your base strings in half. I have 15 here, so one side's going to have 7, one's going to have 8, doesn't really matter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my 2 very outermost strings. Doesn't matter which side, I'm starting on the right side here. So I'm taking my 2 outermost base strings, and what I'm going to be doing is actually a forward knot using these 2 strings, just like so. And then once I do that, I'm going to take those 2 strings I just did a knot with and then grab my next base string and do another forward knot over top of those 2 base strings that I just did my knots with, just like so. Then I'm going to grab those 3 base strings and then my next base string in line and do another forward knot over top of all 3 of those base strings I just did my knots with, etc., etc. Keep going down your line of base strings and doing this. So once you have done one half of your base strings, we're going to go to the other side now and do the other half. So again, I'm going to start with my 2 outer base strings, but this time we're doing a backward knot because we're on the left this time. And then I'm going to grab my next base string in line and do another backward knot over my outer 2 strings I just did my knots with. Then I'm going to grab my next base string and I'm going to be doing another backward knot now over my 3 base strings I just did my knots with, etc., etc. Just keep going until you run out of base strings at this point. So now we have like these two strands, and I'm going to be connecting them, and to connect them I'm going to be using a square knot. So I'm going to be taking a piece of scrap thread. You can use any thread, whatever. I'm doing this purple string, you can do whatever color. And I'm going to be sliding the scrap thread underneath these two strands. I'm going to take my left string and cross it over top of the strands in the middle, and then take my right string and cross it over top of my left string, and then bring that underneath my two strands and then through the loop that the other string created, and then pull it tight, if that makes sense. Square knots are like the most complicated things to explain. There's a lot of videos and pictures online and stuff on how to do this if this is too confusing for you, but it's kind of more of like a visual thing than like an explaining thing. I don't know. And since I started on the right the first time, now I'm going to take my left string and create the loop, and then my right string is going to like go underneath the strands and then through the loop. And then I'm going to keep switching back and forth. I usually do this about 6 times, but you can do it however many times you want. I mean, I'd recommend doing it at least twice to like make sure it's secure, but yeah, just keep doing your square knots. You can just tie a knot if this is too confusing for you, whatever you want to do, but I just think the square knot looks nice. Alright, and then once you've done all your square knots, you can just go ahead and cut off the extra string and like leave a little bit of like excess, you know. You don't really need to seal this with nail polish. If you want to, you're totally welcome to, but it should be secure enough. And yeah, that is basically how you start and end an alpha pattern on a keyring. I hope you guys enjoyed this video.